Hello and welcome to another episode of Bare Bones Wargaming, a show with no bells, no whistles, no frills, just a man, a camera, and his game. This episode, I'm going to be talking about Pavlov's house one more time. I've been doing that here for the last couple episodes, but this now is, that's right, it's the Bare Bones Wargaming opinion time. And you all know what that means. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, sorry for butchering the theme song, but otherwise you get into copyright trouble. So, you know how it is. Six one, half dozen the other, right? So, the good, the bad, and the ugly of Pavlov's house. Let's start with the good. The good. There is a boatload of variety here, okay? And in terms of replayability, okay? From the cards in the decks, how they're shuffled, to the dice rolls, to the tactic cards that are involved. There is a ton of replayability here. So I like that. I also like the fact that there is kind of like a variety of levels here, because with this map here, you've got more of an operational feel. You know, you're trying to organize the Volga flotilla, or, you know, 62nd Army Command Headquarters, giving the orders for that. And then the middle board here, you know, it feels a little more, not operational, but maybe grand tactical is a better way of putting it. Because, you know, it's where the Germans are surging in towards you, and you can stick your sappers down. And then, of course, you have Pavlov's house itself, which is the tactical end of it. And I'm not a big tactical warfare kind of guy, but I have enjoyed this game a lot. I think partly because it's tactical without feeling overwhelming. And I guess, for me, growing up when I did, the gold standard, if you will, of tactical wargaming was squad leader. And then, of course, advanced squad leader. And it always... those games made tactical warfare just seem completely overwhelming. And again, you know, they're fine for what they are. You know, I know people who basically ASL is a lifestyle for them. But I just never could get into it that much. I appreciate the skill and the ability that goes into those games and designing them and such, but it's just not really for me. But this has enough tactical feel without feeling like overwhelming, or feeling, to me, wallowing in detail. So I enjoy it in that sense, this variety of it. Because I can't think of too many games that really let you do this kind of thing. You know, it puts you in that position where, you know, you feel like... You know, I guess one of my other things that I like about the game is, to use a comparison here with Saving Private Ryan, you kind of feel like Captain Miller. You know, you've got the upper echelon over here that things are happening and they're organizing things, and you're like, dude, where's my supplies? Where's my artillery support? And then you get to here where it's like, okay, you know, Captain, they're coming down track 5, they're coming up, you know, street 2, and then you get to this point here where it's like, okay, you go here, you're over here, get that mortar over here, get this machine gun over here, where the devil is the anti-tank rifle? You know, those kind of things. So I like that. I like that feel, with, again, without feeling overwhelming or feeling like I'm wallowing in detail that is just, in my opinion, not necessary. There is a lot of tension in this game. That's another positive here. You know, you really do kind of sweat, you know. You know, you're not just a squirrel in the world trying to find a nut. Sorry. As you grew up in the 90s, you know what I'm talking about. But there is a lot of tension here, you know, because you do kind of have to balance between everything that's going on. And you got the Germans pushing in, and you got the Luftwaffe pounding everything, and you got, you know, you're building under attack, and holy smoke, this side's ready to cave in, and, you know, there is a lot of tension to it. Which also leads me to another positive point. There's a lot of decision making in this game. Now, granted, there are some parameters that are restricted. There are certain patterns, but I mean, that's true of anything in life. But, you know, you really, you know, when you draw those 4 cards off the deck, and you know, you're kind of like, okay, you know, how do I use these things? You know, should I use the signal guy? Should I use the artillery? You know, what about the two headquarters? Reinforcements or supplies? You know, which one is more important, kind of thing. You know, there is a lot of decisions to make. Where to put the guys in the house? When do I move this unit around? Who do I flip? Who do I use to, you know, get the guys to recover? You know, do I take the chance with the empty artillery space and place a marker, or do I eliminate the disrupted marker on the other artillery space? There's a lot of decision making here, so you're always fully engaged with the game, I guess is what I'm trying to say with that. I like the bits too in the game. I've used both the cubes because, you know, like these spaces are just, in my opinion, too small for the markers. But I like the markers, and I also like the fact that you can play this game for the most part. I mean, there are some things with the cards, but like the bits and stuff, you know, you can play this game with just by looking at the pictures, so to speak. So I think that's kind of cool. The rulebook, I also like the rulebook. The rulebook, I think, is laid out well. There's examples that go with each major rule. You know, so like here, for example, you know, on one page you've got the assault rules. Okay, and you got an example of the card right there too, so you don't have to flip to the front to look at things and stuff. And then you got a nice example here. Color, identifying things, nice paragraph explaining things. So I've had a few questions with the rules, nothing earth-shattering. You know, far fewer than some other games I can think of. And if I can be blunt, I think this is one of the better rule books that DVG Games has put out recently. You know, especially after the B-17 Flying Fortress of the year. And again, I have to give a kudos to the designer of that game because he really spent a lot of time rewriting and reworking that rulebook online when it first came out. This rulebook is really, really good for that. Okay. And let's see. Oh, I kind of already mentioned this one about, you know, it has a good tactical feel for those folks who don't want to get in a situation like, you know, where they feel overwhelmed, but they'd like to play a tactical game, like me. This is a good compromise for that. All right, so lots of good things about this game. I like the counters. They're nice and sturdy. They're big. I wish I'd known about this on Kickstarter because the personalized counters are really cool. The cards are nice. I mean, I always sleeve my cards just as a general principle because I'm an aggressive, assertive shuffler. So, yeah, so I think the production value of this is good. The player aid cards are nice too. You know, I kind of showed some of the stuff in the unboxing video and all, but, you know, again, it's nice that you get the picture, and then right here you get all the major points. And, you know, you get the page numbers. So if you need to look something up, go look it up. All right. Now, to the bad. First of all, two things really I will mention in the bad category. And I mention, sometimes, like I said, I mention the bad and the ugly, not necessarily because it's something that I personally dislike about the game, but I also try to think, because part of my point here in doing all these videos and stuff is to share my thoughts, share, you know, what I'm observing with the game, for people who, for things that other people might care about, let's put it that way. For example, some people love their mounted map boards, you know, they swear by them. Other people, it doesn't matter. But, you know, I like to point that out. To me, I don't care. So long as the map works, I could care less for the most part. I mean, mounted map board's nice, but I'm not, you know, I'm not fanatical on it or anything. A fanatical devotion to, okay, never mind, no Monty Python. So, with that thought in mind, two things that I will say observation-wise. One thing that can be bad is the card draw. You know, if you're looking for those Volga, I don't know why it's so hard for me to say that. Volga Flotilla cards. You know, if you don't get a bunch of them or you don't get them connected enough, you know, that can be a problem. And it can happen. Not to say that maybe it happens frequently, but there can be some frustrating things, especially when you get those extra Fog of War cards in. So the card draw at times, you know, same thing with the German deck. You know, if you get an unlucky shuffle, and you've got 3 times in a row of Luftwaffe attacks, which happened to me a couple of times. You know, you really can get under the gun and get behind the gun and under the gun, behind the 8 ball. That's where I was trying to go with that. Pretty quick. So, you know, the card draw can be an issue at times. For those of you who don't like a lot of luck in your games, you may not like the card draw aspects of this. So, I will say, after playing the basic game about 4 times or so, and kind of figuring out, or not necessarily counting cards, but sort of like that, the game can be a little repetitive in the early stages. You know, deck 1 and deck 2. Because again, you know, there's only so many cards in both of those. Those are 2 of the skinnier decks, and there's only so many permutations, if you will. Now, the tactical cards do help mitigate that, because depending on what comes out, you know, it can be a serious problem, it can be a bigger challenge, it can be a sigh of relief. You know, it kind of adds an extra layer to that. Now, I will admit I have not messed with the Soviet operational card, which is another variant you can do, which basically simulates, if I remember correctly here, let me make sure I got this. Whoops! Sorry, I didn't mean to bump you all there. But basically it simulates sending supplies and support to other parts of the front, if you will, other parts of the fighting, to do that, you know, move some things out of the game and stuff for the operational ones. So I haven't messed with those yet because I'm having a hard enough time as it is with the basic game and the German tactic card, so I've kind of left that out for the time being. So, but those are the 2 things that I think can be kind of bad. The card draw can get sticky, then the repetitive feel of it, especially early in the game. That being said, this game is not that hard to reset. I can reset this pretty quick. Not as quick as some other games, but it doesn't take a huge amount of time. It does take some time because you have to divide out the decks and get them all shuffled up and all that, and that does take a little bit of time and effort, but not enough that it would be, if you got a bad card draw and you got smashed, so to speak, really quick, it's not something that would be bad enough that you're like, geez, now I gotta spend all this time resetting the game and getting it set up again. I don't think it's as bad as all that. Now, some people may disagree depending on what they feel is ideal setup times, but that's how I see that. The ugly. Honestly, for this game, there's only one thing, in my opinion, that I find ugly. And the one thing I find ugly is the disruption, the victory condition of the second disruption of the 62nd Army headquarters. If that happens in the game, if it gets disrupted twice, you lose the game automatically. I understand why it's there, but what's the word I want? It just bothers me, I guess. I've lost 2 games so far like that, because if you get behind early and you're not able to get, again, this kind of goes with the card draw, if you're not able to get those signal units up here from spaces 14 through 17 and get those disruption markers off, again, because of that chain of events, you know, if you roll a 15 and 15's already got a disruption marker and so does 16 and so does 17, then bam, it goes to 18. And if you roll another one, and let's say that they have disruption markers all the way down to say 12, and you roll a 13, it goes straight up the chain and you get hit again. So that feels a little, to me, overwhelming. Maybe I wouldn't go so far as to call it unbalanced. But, and of course, you know, you can roll an 18 with 3 dice. I mean, it's extremely difficult to do, and it's extremely unlucky, but it is theoretically possible. I guess maybe it feels a little off to me because there is a lot of other things in the game that you have a greater influence on, in my opinion. You know, like when the Germans are advancing in the middle board, you can shuffle your people around in Pavlov's house to kind of mitigate against that. But if you don't get the cards that you need to clear things, then of course if you're clearing things all the time, then you can't, get the supplies across the Volga. You can't get the artillery in place to help support, which, tanks can't be killed by regular infantrymen. You got to have anti-tank rifles, or you got to be calling in artillery. So it does, I guess it's because, and again, there are things beyond your control, naturally enough. I mean, a lot of things in life are beyond an individual's control. But for the purposes of a game, it just feels a little much, I guess, is the way I'm trying to put it. Now, I guess you could say that, you could just disregard, that if you really wanted to do like a house rule. And then, just all those markers just means you can't really get the supplies, because 62nd Army headquarters has to be clear for you to get the supplies in the staging area to get them across the Volga and get them to Pavlov's house. But as it's written, as it's set, that is the only thing that I really think is ugly, is just, it just feels like it's a bit much. I don't know how else to articulate it. Again, I don't think it's like unbalanced or unfair or it's a deal breaker, but it just feels like a bit much. It just feels a little wonky, for lack of a better way to put it. So overall, Pavlov's House, my final evaluation is it will stay in my collection. I do enjoy this game quite a bit. It's interesting, and I like something that gives you lots of decisions to make and things to think about along those lines, and it is immersive. This game is definitely immersive. So I'm glad I bought it. I'm glad I picked it up. I'm sorry I missed out on the Kickstarter, to be quite frank about it. But it is an enjoyable game. It will stay in my collection. It does get a thumbs up for me. But it does have a few drawbacks, which, I mean, everything has a few drawbacks. But again, I'm giving my opinion. So, those of you watching, you can decide how you want to do things, or if there's something that I point out, you're like, nah, that's just, or like, the 62nd Army headquarters thing. If you're like, nah, man, that's too much luck for me, well, you know about it now ahead of time. So that's part of my review. But looking at my lovely dry erase board here, I've got 8 good things, 2 bad things, and 1 ugly. So, clearly doing the math there, I have a favorable impression of this game, and I'm keeping it, and I will be playing it from time to time. Okay, so all that being said, where I'm headed next, honestly, I'm sticking with Stalingrad. I'm going back to Stalingrad Inferno on the Volga, because that game is just, I've been thinking about that game ever since I've been playing with Pavlov's House here. I've been thinking about getting back to it and trying to figure out, how to beat it, if you will, because it's such a, feels like such a challenge to me. And the other thing I like about it, I mentioned this in my review, is it's an engaging Stalingrad game without feeling like too much grind, too much repetitive aspects of it, or maybe not repetitive, because I mean the battle was repetitive in the sense that it wasn't basically an attrition struggle, but repetitive in the sense that I have to go through 800,000 steps to push somebody out of one area and stuff. That's not my cup of tea. So I'm going to go back and engage in that for at least 1 more play, maybe 2. I have a tendency when I take a game out of a box to play it at least twice. Once I'm done with that, I have no idea what I'm going to do next. Well, I have a little idea. Okay, so I'm fibbing. But, because Pacific Tide, I saw on Compass's website, has been pushed back to November now for a release date. Oh, and Corsair Leader, I'm not sure when it's shipping. Hopefully sometime soon, because I know they had that whole snafu with the printing situation, which made the whole thing foobar. So, yeah, that was unfortunate with that, because I was looking forward to being able to play that, because I like the Leader series from DVG Games. So with those two kind of, hanging out there in limbo, so to speak, I've been contemplating a couple of things. The big thing I've been kind of thinking about is going back and taking a look at Moscow 41 and Leningrad 41. So I may pull those out. It's been about a year and a half since I played those, roughly a year and a half. So I might pull those out, mess around with them a little bit, you know, and then show y'all a video on them. If you're interested in my thoughts on either one of those games, you can go to Board Game Geek, and I already did a written review for both Leningrad 41 and Moscow 41, and I still would like to see Rostov 41. Yeah, I know I'm kind of back on my soapbox here, but I would love to see that. So Pavlov's House, my opinion, is a winner, even with its few blemishes. It's a very good game. It's a very engaging game, and you know, people who like games like Target for Today and The Hunters and things like that would definitely, I think, have a blast with this, because this is a very immersive game. So this is Tim Korchner from Bare Bones Wargaming saying thanks for watching, and more than likely I will see you next time from somewhere again on the Eastern Front, be it Moscow or Leningrad. Thanks for watching.